We play and call it work.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, filming at Warhammer World with Jes Bickham. Jes is the, let me see if I get this right, it's a long title, Creative Writing Director. Manager. Oh, I was going between the two. Creative Writing Manager of the Book and Box Game Studio.
That's correct.
Awesome. What on earth is the Book and Box Game Studio?
So we are the studio at Games Workshop that makes all the books and box games. So not Forge World, all the codices, army books, battle tomes, Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and things like Warhammer Quest.
Now you say box games, so you mean like Gorchos and those kind of things?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Shadespire, that's another thing we do.
Is that not handled by the Specialist Studio, or is that kind of what you...
That came from us, yeah. So the Specialist Studio do things like, obviously Necromunda's about to come out, but yeah, Shadespire was us.
So what makes a decision of Necromunda as Specialists and Shadespire as you?
So anything to do with Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer Age of Sigmar is us, really, and then the other more specialist things come from Forge World and the Specialist Game Studio there.
So Necromunda's not 40k, or is it more that it...
Yeah, it's not mainline 40k. It's not mass battles with Space Marines, so it's a kind of offshoot.
Awesome. And what is your role as the creative writing manager in all of this?
So I manage the guys that write the rules and the guys that write the background, and also just recently I've inherited the army painters as well, the guys that paint all the armies for us.
Now I recognize the name from a long time ago. You've been working for Games Workshop for a while now. How long have you been working for Games Workshop?
Sure. So well, I've actually been here for about 5.5 years because I used to be the editor of White Dwarf. But then if you...
Maybe I think that's where I've seen your name then. Yeah. I think I've seen it in the White Dwarf.
Yeah, probably. But then if you rewind 10, 15 years, I also used to edit a magazine we did called Battle Games in Middle-earth, which was a Lord of the Rings partwork magazine we did. So, yes, I have some history with the company, yeah.
Okay, so been here for a while. And do you do some writing yourself, or is it just that you just manage the writers?
I used to on White Dwarf a bit, but yeah, nowadays it's just managing the writers, which is largely sitting back and going, what have you done? And then they do something awesome, and I go, that's brilliant, do more of that. Yeah.
What's your favorite part of the job then, when you look at all the aspects of what you're over? What do you enjoy the most about it?
Oh, that's there's a lot actually. That's a hard one to choose because managing both the rules guys and the background guys, those guys work together to come up with the stuff you find in our books. So there's a lot of generation of cool stories and character and what we call IP, and then the rules guys will take that and make rules that really reflect that. And to see those two things get developed, we have lots of meetings to thrash out what we think these things are, and then to see those guys take those things and make some really good rules, really fun rules about them, and some really cool stories. That's the real exciting bit. It's really good.
So when it comes to rules development, then, so you're the guy that's over that then,
yeah,
but not the guy writing the rules.
Correct. And
so I've noticed that over the years, as I've come to terms of how Games Workshop works on things, because at first when from just the armchair, what is it called, the armchair commander, whatever, when you try armchair general, that's what it is. When all the people behind, like, looking at what you're doing, they're like, well, why don't they just do it like this? But now the more I've learned, the more I realize the turnaround times and how long it takes for things to happen, and how often, one thing I learned when talking to some of the guys from Warhammer community is that the model is made first, and then the rules are based off of that. So how do you reconcile all of that then with things in terms of balance? Like, obviously 40K is a great tournament game, but it's not like the top priority to be like, we want this to be a tournament game. It's more like, we want this to be a really cool game. Yeah. So where do you kind of fit in? We've got the model first. Now how do we actually balance that and create rules that are fun so that people actually want to play against the people with these as well as playing with them? How does your mind wrap around all of that when you have 1,000 different products that all have to somehow work together? What kind of process do you go through to make sure you try to do your best to make it all match together?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It comes from the miniature first. The guys in the miniatures department make some astonishing stuff, and so that's what we start with, and we try and come up with rules and background that are that accurately reflect that miniature. You know, if you spend X amount of pounds or dollars on this miniature and spend a lot of time building it and a lot of love painting it, you want something that's going to accurately represent it, and that's going to be fun to play with as well. But at the same time, and it was not always this way for us, we're in a position now where we really want to make sure those rules are not just entertaining, but are as balanced as possible. That's why you see us engaging with FAQ so much these days. I think we just published the Craft Worlds FAQ yesterday.
Yes, I'm sure all the NRE players out there are very happy.
Yeah, yes. We love you guys.
But it was just too much. It was just too much. I'm sorry.
And because we're for the match, and it's important to understand as well that we're looking at the miniatures and our rules across the 3 different ways to play. So we've got the open play, the narrative play, and the match play. And a lot of the time when we're talking about games, the conversation is sort of unconsciously about matched play. And so a lot of the stuff we're doing in terms of trying to balance, it's in the match play corner. If anyone doesn't like the Inari or Craft World erratas and FAQs we put up, if you're not playing match play, it doesn't really matter. If you're playing narrative play or open play, just use the things as they're already presented. So we're trying to make sure the things are representative for the different ways in which people play the games. But you're right, it's really complex, and we have a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions. One of the things this morning was we've got in December we got the second heat of the Warhammer 40,000 GT here at Warhammer World, and we realised the other day that the events team realised the other day that Chapter Approved is going to come out a little bit before that. Should we let people use content from Chapter Approved? And what's that going to do to people's experience of the GT? Are people going to welcome that, or is it going to be awkward for them? So we're constantly having discussions about this kind of thing, and what's right for people and what's going to be fun for people. But in the end, it's all quite simple, because it does come back to the miniature, and you go, are we doing that justice? Because if we're doing that justice, then the other stuff should click into place if we're doing our job right.
How much would you agree with the statement that in order to balance a rule set, all that you have to worry about is the points cost? Like if something's too powerful, just raise the points cost. If it's not powerful enough, then lower the points cost. Do you believe that would fix any problem if, of course, you could perfectly points value everything?
I don't think it would fix everything, no. And I think it's important to realise points values, of course, are very important for match play. And that's a real strong lever you can pull in match play. And I think it does fix a lot of things in match play. But if we don't have the wording of our rules correct, semantically correct, we've occasionally written rules in the past which you can interpret in the wrong way. And we all know how much of a problem that can be. So if we haven't done our job in making sure that rule's watertight and the rules as written equal rules as intended, that's the gold measure, right?
I have a shirt. It's Team RAI. It's rules as intended. So we actually sell shirts RAI and rules as written. So you can always choose which side you're on. I'm a rules as intended. I'm like, there's no way they intended that. Although sometimes the FAQs come out and I'm proven to be wrong. But there's lots of times where the FAQs come out and I'm like, see, there's no way they wanted it that way.
Exactly. Do you understand? And do you roll or do you pick?
That depends. Because we have our own studio, we need to have some consistency. So if something comes up often enough, we'll house rule it. We'll have a studio rule. But if we come up with something just out of nowhere, usually I try to favor my opponent because I'm the one filming. So if it favors me, then I get more flack than if it favors my opponent. But if we actually just can't come up with a solution because it's like, I don't know, it could be this or it could be that, and then that's when we roll off. But I'm more of a house rule kind of guy than a just roll it off every time that you come across that situation kind of guy.
So I think if we get the semantics right of the rule, then that's equally as important as getting the points right.
Assuming the semantics is right, though, would it just be a matter of adjusting the points to get it just in the right level?
I think so, and you'll see that when Chapter Improved comes out, because it's got a lot of tweaked points costs in there for existing stuff that we've brought out since we launched the new edition of Warhammer 40,000. So for those people in that corner of match play, we're working very hard to make sure things are as up to date as possible, and we're tweaking things to hopefully get them right over time. And we've got a lot of play testers involved in helping us out with that. So we're taking it quite seriously, and hopefully people are liking it, and it's doing what we hope it's doing, which is making the game better for everyone. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm personally, with my recent series, because I have a series called Beat Map Bat Rep, and Season 5, which I'm on, the whole goal is never to play a game of Maelstrom or Eternal War, which is all I played before. And so I've gone through open play, I've gone through narrative play, and I've just been having a blast. We're still playing with points, but even when we're doing open play, just because there seems to be, at least when our commenters seem to enjoy that more, and I don't mind either way. It's like points, power leveled. If you're not playing match play, then honestly they're up in the air. But do you have any idea, and you can't know this number perfectly, in your mind, what percentage of games played are open, narrative, and match play? What assumptions are you working on in order to craft your rules for those three?
I think if we were to make an assumption, we would probably think that most people fall into match play unconsciously or consciously, because match play does two things. It caters for the people that want to play the game in a more serious competitive way, or a purer way, but also it's there to enable people just to pick up and play a game as simply as possible. You know, the whole thing with the missions is they're meant to be as evenly balanced as possible. It's meant to allow you just to, as much as is possible with Warhammer 40,000, for example, to get an out-of-the-box experience. You know, it's the easiest way to set up a game with someone, match play. You know, you've got some very obvious objectives. You've got even points levels, and so I think because of that as well, it's just the easiest thing for people to fall into. Because narrative play, although I think it's one of the most enjoyable ways to play if you get it right, it takes a lot of effort, actually, because you're coming up with stories. You can really go to town with the scenery in your battlefields, and it requires a lot of effort. I mean, the rewards, and I hope you're finding this as well, the rewards are huge if you do it right. It's really good fun. And open play, if you can approach it with the right philosophy, which is just throw it all on the table and have some fun, which is, we're all the different ways of playing about having fun, right? But in slightly different ways, and people like to play the games in different ways as well. But open play is much more carefree. But I would think, and it's a massive assumption, of course, that most people fall into match play because it's the easiest way to get a game up and running. You go down to your local game store and you go, what are we doing? 1,500 points, Maelstrom of War. Great, I know what that is. Bang, you can get on the table straight away. But with narrative gaming, you probably there's a bit more homework to be done, there's a bit more setting it up, a bit more discussion of what the forces might be, what the story is, that kind of thing. And like I say, the rewards are huge for that, but it takes a bit more effort to get into.
No, I definitely agree. I prefer narrative play. Yeah. But in a pinch, it is a little harder to pull off because, if I have a guest show up with an army, you can't just say we're going to do this narrative scenario, because what if the armies don't even really match that narrative scenario? You really there's a lot more considerations. Yeah. So match play does work out, and then match play allows you to not worry about like I can build certain lists without worrying that they're overpowered. Yeah. Because match play will restrict what I can do. Yeah. It'll restrict things that I can like bringing multi-psychers. I don't have to worry about. Oh, if I'm in narrative play, I'm really tempted to bring that same psychic power 4 times because it's so good. Yeah. But in match play, it's like, no, I'll actually bring one of each psychic power because I know I can't use more than one. Yeah. So it encourages that diversity as well, which I really enjoy, of course. So let's talk about playtesting a little bit. Let's go to a specific example. The Tyranid Codex, which recently came out, which I love. Oh, good. Absolutely love. I think there's very few ambiguities in that one, which is... Well, actually, before we get into that, it reminds me of a question I have to ask. The format of the book. See, I've loved a lot of stuff about 8th edition, but the one thing that's kind of been puzzling to me is the format of the way that the codexes are laid out. I get putting the points not with the models because they're changing, but why put the war gear not right at the back of the book? Like, it's actually kind of a bit of a pain to flip back. Right. And why not have a summary? The summary of the it's like 10 pages from the back. Yeah. And also, why not have a summary of all the units? Was there a conscious decision to not put those in? I'm assuming you didn't just forget to put them in. Like, what was the reason for not putting that in the back like you normally do?
It's a really good question, and we've done so much Warhammer 40,000 in such a short amount of time. I can't remember the original reasoning. But
can I ask? I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. Was it just forgotten?
No, I don't think it was forgotten. I think there was. I seem to recall there was some very specific reasoning behind it. But as ever, because you've already mentioned it slightly, I mean, the turnarounds we have before it actually comes out in the real world, some of the decisions we make, we don't realise until they're in the hands of people about the utility of it. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, I mean, the way points values work in the codex is we had to, as you say, we had to separate them from the profiles, because if we wanted to update those, it immediately invalidates the data sheet if they're on there. So that's why power ratings are on there, but the points values aren't. And it's not an ideal system. It's quite fiddly to get your head around, flipping back and forth.
Well, now, some concessions. I saw some improvements in the Tyranid Codex. Like, for example, if a weapon is unique to something, you gave it 0 points, whereas it wasn't that way in the index.
Yeah.
Like bolters were 0, but like something that only won the exocrin's bioplasmic cannon had its own points cost.
Yeah.
So it was impossible at a glance to see how much of an exocrin cost.
Yeah, right.
And now you've folded those over. You're like, nobody else has this. There's no reason for it to have a points cost because we just folded into the cost of the exocrin. He doesn't even have a choice. So why separate that? Yeah. So I do enjoy that. That was an improvement there. But yeah, so sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, it's all good. So a lot of this stuff is we're getting, now things are out in the real world, we're getting utility feedback from players and customers about what's good, what's not so good. But of course it takes time for us to enact some of those changes because our turnaround is so big on some of this stuff. I mean, we're working on stuff at the moment which isn't out till next summer, autumn. So it's not true for everything, but it does mean that things we want to change does take a bit of time to filter through into reality.
Yeah, and you can kind of see those waves. Like these few codexes look like this, and all of a sudden there's a switch, and then those few look like that, and then there's a switch. So that's kind of probably the lag of the feedback time is what we're seeing right there. Has there been any talk or plans of actually creating an app or a piece of software like Army Builder or Battle Scribe? Because those softwares are really good utilities with one exception. They're not up to date, and you can't always 100% trust them because they're user-created data. But we love using them regardless. But have you? I know you had your like forced requisition things in the code in the iBooks, but those really didn't fill that need. Is there any? Have there been discussions or plans on doing something like that?
So yeah, we have a digital team that are working on all sorts of app-based things all the time, and I do believe there is some work being done on an army building thing. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I can think. I picture like War Machine has one, and I remember liking the fact that like I don't care so much about the functionality to be able to use it during the game. Like, just let me print off my list and I'm done. Although that's cool. But one thing I saw the potential in from a business point of view is the app was free, but then they charged you for all of the different ones. So it's like now you're selling them a codex, and now you get to sell them like the data pack as well for that. So it seems like a good. You don't have to just give it for free. Like that people totally would pay for the armies that they have, or some huge number for the entire pack. So I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Any idea of time frame for that, or can't say? No,
can't say. Don't know.
Oh, you don't actually? Okay. A legitimate don't know. All right. Well, that's fair. Just knowing that that's been thought of is nice. Yeah. Because like I said, I love Army Builder, love Battle Scribe, but have been, there's always a lag. Yeah. And so a new Tyranid Codex comes out. It'd be nice if on day one I could also download the pack into my app and be able to build an army, because that's so convenient. And it's just a good way to. I've seen miniature war games try to incorporate iPads into their game by literally having you use the iPad in the game. I've never liked that. Yeah. But it seems like the nice bridge is actually having the Army Manager and all that kind of be, as you have the choice to have it digital as well. Yeah. Otherwise, you see everybody coming in with these stacks of papers. Yeah. And even if. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so let's go back to playtesting. I was asking that question before I got sidetracked in my own mind. So new Tyranid Codex came out, which was awesome. Yep. How much?
What's your favorite thing about it? Can I ask? What's your favorite thing about it?
The thing I liked about Tyranids when they came out in 8th overall was that most of the codex was playable, which I didn't find in 7th. 7th, they became lackluster. And even when they got their new codex during 7th, it's like it felt like a few steps backwards and maybe a few steps sideways in terms of how good they were on the table. I've always wanted to play them close combat, and in 7th never really let me do that. It took too many things away from close combat, like Overwatch or outflanking, no longer being able to charge from outflanking, so Gene Stealers all of a sudden couldn't do the thing that they wanted to. And so I'd probably say if I had to choose one thing, my favorite thing about the new Codex Tyranids is that I can play them as a close combat army and be scary again. Yeah. Like I felt like back in 5th, I were scary as a close combat, and then they kind of shifted over to a more shooty army, but they weren't as good as other shooty armies. Yeah. And so they feel like now you can do them either way. Yeah. They can have some scary shooting and some very scary close combat. And still, or you can do your monster, you can do your Nidzilla list still if you want to. So I like, my favorite thing in any codex is diversity. I want to be able to play with any range of my models and not feel like I'm just lowering my power level, because I feel like playing with Raveners, they suck, but I haven't played with them for a while, so I'll play. Now it's like, no, I want to play with Raveners, and they'll do fine. They might not be, like there might be certain things that are obviously more powerful, like Old One Eye, going down to 9 wounds. Best buff ever. Yeah. I was so excited because I brought him so many times and people kept sniping him. I'm like, no, kill the 3 Carnifexes with them first. Yeah, now it's like, no, you can't. You don't have a choice. So I loved little tweaks like that because it showed a certain level of awareness. That's good, of how the player wanted to play with that. And so I really enjoyed that. So I have to say, it's just more like, I feel like I can build, as soon as I read the codex, I came up with 10 different ways to build an army list, and that excites me.
Yeah,
so.
brilliant. Good.
So now the question for you, as that was enough of me talking, is let's talk about that codex in particular, and you can tell me how much that compares to others. Yeah. How much playtesting goes into that in terms of number of people playtesting it and number of hours?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of playtesting went into it. We try and do as much as we can in-house, of course. We've got a team of five rules writers and a team of 5 background writers, and we try and do as much playtesting in work hours as we can, but that's necessarily limited, of course, because the guys are making stuff.
Well, and also when you're writing the rules, you're not going to think about the workarounds.
Yeah.
You're like, this thing was meant for this, so let's play test it there. Somebody else will be like, oh, it could work for this. And you're like, oh, I never thought of that.
And sometimes it takes an objective third party to see some of the synergies you're making as well, because some of them we don't see, and it's like, oh, do we want that to happen? Is it unintended? Is it intended? But we, as you know, with 8th edition, we came in with a very conscious thing. We want to engage external playtesters to help the game improve, and as you know, there's a bunch of guys we've got involved from the big US tournaments, the guys from Adepticon and LVO and Mike Brandt from Nova, all those guys, and the London GT, and all sorts of people. We've just expanded it again.
How do you filter out the noise? Because people are going to play it, they'll roll just ones and then complain that something's just not powerful enough. How do you filter out that?
From the playtesters, you mean? Yeah. So they've been very good in, well, we've all been very good in communicating about very clear lines of communication. So they will only offer a consensus opinion from their group, for example. So there's not, so whilst we're all, there's a lot of conversations going on at any one time, but in terms of delivering final feedback on something, those guys will have a conference to decide on what their feedback is, and it'll come through as a consensus thing.
So not one person's game really muffing up the results.
Be encompassed in their final feedback that they send over as well, which isn't to say, there's conversations going on all the time, but in terms of the final feedback, there's a lot of consolidated context going on, which is good.
I noticed that in 8th edition FAQs come out a little faster than 7th. In fact, I remember when we were doing when 8th edition first came out, I'm like, oh, there's some things we got a house rule because they're not clear. And I'm like, you know what, let's create like an unofficial FAQ, just kind of how like the ITC has, because it's probably going to be 6 months before they have an FAQ anyways, and so we can kind of be the place for people to look. And I told Martin about this, and he's like, don't bother, don't waste your time. And sure, like a week later, an FAQ came out. And like 8 battle reports we had just filmed, all of a sudden we're not proper anymore. But you know what, I was appreciative of that. So that switch from having kind of that really big lag for FAQs to like pretty quick, and even multiples. So it's not just like, oh, the Tyranid Codex came out a month ago, here's the FAQ, we're done. Yeah. It's like, no, now here's another one that addresses a couple more things that came up. Oh, everybody's, that person we saw 10 lists at this tournament that were nothing but flyers. Okay, guys, sorry, flyers no longer count as being on the table. Yeah.
And one of those guys, Brad, was one of our playtesters as well. So
you're looking at it, you're like, I don't think that's what we meant. You want to do an all-flyer game, go play an all-flyer game. But don't bring it to a tournament kind of thing, right?
Exactly. So our playtesters inadvertently contributed to that that FAQ.
So what's the difference in? There must be more workload in it, but I guess just how much more workload is there? How much of your time are the rules writers' time dedicated to just filtering out the stuff for the FAQs?
It's a good question. So we didn't do them, as you say, we didn't do them for the longest time in 7th edition. Then we did them all at the end, which was monstrous. And then, so a guy called Robin Codices is kind of the architect behind the new edition of Warhammer 40,000, and he's kind of the filter through which all Warhammer 40,000 flows in the team. And he's the guy that's been also picking up the FAQs, really, with the help of the rest of the team, of course. And we have different rules writers heading up different projects, of course, and they're more or less responsible for those kind of things. But he's been picking up the FAQs, and it's a lot of work. But we do monitor what's going on, what people are saying. On the internet and at events, we keep a very close eye on that, and we're looking at it all the time because it's useful information. So we're working on, for example, I don't think I will get sacked for saying this, I hope, but we're working on the...
Martin's got final approval before this goes out, so you're okay.
I love you, Martin. So we're working on the Tyranid FAQ at the moment and the errata for that. And so I look at, as a big Tyranid fan myself, I look at things like the Tyranid Hive forum every day. and see what those guys are saying. I read it all, and so we're always looking everywhere and listening and encouraging feedback as well. I mean, please just get in contact if you've got any questions about anything.
I'm trying to think of something that I actually would have a question about for Tyranids. Or I know that there was one really silly argument about the Tyrant Guard and how the mortal wounds were put on, but there was a slight wording of the rules that they added. Yeah, I think you added a little bit of, I'll use the word fluff in there. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I didn't want to say lore because it's not lore. I mean, like, you know how sometimes you write a rule and it's like, yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was in the middle of the rule though. It's like, if you roll a 2+, they jump out in front and take the wound instead, so they suffer this. But then it's like, but they said they jump out, like, people will take advantage of this.
Way of the rule in some, if you do it like that, yeah.
So typically, you separate those. So you have the paragraph of the narrative of the rule. I'm trying to use a different word other than fluff because yeah. No, I don't want to call the lore fluff because that's not fluff. But I mean those little fluffy things that you kind of add in to make it like more.
Background text, we call it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fine if they're separated. It's the problem when they're together.
Problems sometimes if they're in it, so which is a really good learn for us and a good bit of feedback. Yeah.
Is there anything like? I'm trying to think. Is there anything major in the Tyranid FAQ that really?
It's like, for instance, off the top of my head, the High Fleet adaptation for Jormungandr, where you count as being in cover.
If you don't advance or charge.
Yeah. So, but what if you declare a charge? Do you get the +1? That's a thing that's been picked up. So when you declare a charge,
you fail a charge, so you didn't move. So
when you declare a charge and they fire Overwatch, do you get the +1 save? Because does it count as the charge? So
well, if I had to make a ruling on that, just off the cuff, I'd say no, because the intention is that they're not moving very quickly, and so at that point, I know they haven't moved yet, but the idea is that it's in motion, and that's why it's only a 6 to hit, because it's like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. And so I would say no. Is that what it got ruled?
No, they wouldn't get the extra save. Right. Yes. That's it. Yeah. So a little spoiler there for the Tyranid FAQ.
Okay.
Yeah.
You already covered. I thought the best one that I could do when 8th edition first came out is an army of just Tyrannocytes, but all within the Tyrannocyte. You clarified that was right in the rule book, so I'm like, oh, that's too bad, because I wanted to just do the one game where I'm like, here's my army. Just like cover the board. It wouldn't be good. No. It would be pretty bad. But you solved that. A Tyrannocyte can carry any monster. Not another Tyrannocyte. I felt like you wanted to put that in bold and capitalize. Like, you people, you. Any one other spoiler you can give for the Tyranid FAQ?
Trying to think. I think. Sporefield stratagem.
Yes, that was it. Do you have to pay the points cost in match play for all of those different stratagems?
You put me on the spot now. I think you do, but we'll find out sooner or later.
But that makes them totally useless. They're 3 command points. Why would I ever spend 3 command points and pay points for something? Why not just pay points and bring it without spending 3 command points? Is it really worth 3 command points to deep strike something that I paid points for?
I can't honestly remember the answer. But I'll find out, and we will all be pleasantly surprised.
Yay! Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will admit, because I think that was, now that as soon as you said that, because I had kind of erased those stratagems from my mind, because I looked at them and I'm like, there's no way in my battle reports that I'm going to play Tyranids and bring them for free into match play, because I'll have everybody not liking me for that. And so I'm like, but there's no way I'll use that stratagem if I have to pay the points cost for it. Like open a narrative, whatever, you don't pay the points cost. Well, whatever, yeah. But it's 3 command points, so I'm like, it must mean that you get them for free, because that's a hefty price to pay. So there's my feedback, unfiltered.
I will take that on board. Yeah.
And while you're at it, I really have loved it. I honestly can't think of any of the units that are like, I'll never use those.
Will you use a Pyrovore now?
Oh yeah, I used them when 8th edition came out. Yeah, because they have a longer range than 9 inches, so you drop them in a drop pod and you can flame something. And they're actually good in close combat, and they explode. So yeah, totally. Whereas 7th, I wanted to. I really wanted to, but you just
the surprise big hitter, which people are talking about online at the moment, is the Sporocist, actually. Yeah. There seems to be a lot of love for the Sporocist, which means we've done something right there, which is good.
What's all the love about? It didn't really change that much.
So it can shoot, and it can spawn mines as well in the same turn. So you plop it down.
You used to be able to do that in 7th, to do both.
Yeah, but I don't think you could in the index, so we changed that.
I thought it could, though. I thought it had a spore mine launcher, or maybe it got rid of the spore mine launcher. I don't remember.
Generate you can do them both in the same turn now. I think that's what's.
Right, because it was one or the other maybe before. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like this process. I have a few of them, so I like them because they look like terrain too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like these ticks just burrowing. Oh, it's so gross. I love them. I love them. Yeah, no, I can't think of anything else I would change. Gene Stealers are awesome again.
Yep.
Malanthrope, I can build a Zoanthrope army now. Zoanthropes are a little dirty, I feel.
Zoanthropes?
They're dirty. They're powerful.
Yeah. Really? Even if you've just got 3?
Well, you don't just have 3.
Is the right answer.
I like you bring 4. Yeah. You bring 4 and you do 2d3 smites at 24-inch range. I did a game with that, and I brought a shooting list with some Zoanthropes, because I just they're cheap synapse. And I put them down, and yeah, they kind of carried the army. Yeah. And I'm just like smite. I'm like, wow, you're 24 inches away and you're already really hurting. So.
They've got the extra range, haven't they? Yeah.
Yeah. And they had that before. That didn't really change. Oh no, sorry, they got the extra range in the Codex, but they had the extra strong smite in the 8th edition index. So I could talk about Tyranids all day long. We're not going to do that necessarily. So Tyranid FAQ coming out soon. There's a couple spoilers for you, so you're welcome. Unless this took like 2 weeks to go out, and by then the FAQs come out anyways, and then it's not that exciting anymore because it started.
In which case, we'll see what's true.
Yeah. Now you can point it out in the comments below what ended up being right and what ended up being wrong. So I can imagine that even though you're over everything, you're not going to remember everything properly because there's like bajillion rules out there and FAQs.
Yeah, and we're working on a lot of stuff at the same time as well. So it's not like the whole team works on one project at a time. We're working on multiple things, and then also looking at FAQs for things we just brought out, and which
you haven't worked on for a few months.
Right? Yeah.
Does that actually make it a little more beneficial that you haven't worked on it for a few months, so that your mind's not fresh on that anymore?
Yeah, sometimes it does because it just allows you to be a bit more objective. Because when you're working on it, you're right in the guts of it, and sometimes it's very hard to see the wood for the trees because hard to get that outside view. But then once you've put it to bed for a while, and it goes out and gets made, and then it hits the real world, and hopefully you see people getting excited about it, which is really exciting, especially with the Tyranid Codex. A lot of people seem to be very excited about that, which is really heartening to see. But you get to look at it, you get a weird second wave, because it's very exciting working on these things, but then it goes away for a bit, and then it comes out. And we all get excited as customers when it comes out. It's like, oh, yeah, we did the Tyranid Codex, didn't we? Yeah, that's out now. And then you almost get to appreciate it as a customer, and then look at it from that point of view as well.
And then walk in here and see how people are abusing it, and you're like, oh, even our playtesters didn't see that coming.
Why did we do that? Yeah.
Well, that's the internet meta, right? When you're working with playtesters, it's not public. And when you have once it's public, it has that kind of hive mentality, that hive evolution almost, that as soon as one person discovers that list, then that gets disseminated, and all of a sudden everybody's able to work off of that list and perfect it, and then perfect it and perfect it. Like I remember in 7th, there was always 3 to 5 hive tyrants in everybody's army. Everybody's army was your army plus 3 to 5 hive tyrants and the mucolids that let you bring them as troops, which is odd. And of course, captive inquisitor with his servo skulls.
Of course. Why not? Yeah. Throw it in there.
Okay, I know this goes back a long time, but this is something that's been burning me for a long time. Mucolid spores, were they intended to be troops, or was that an accident?
That was. I'm going to dodge that question because that was before my time in the studio.
Oh, so as an accident, I knew it. I was like, why is this thing a troop choice? A 15-point troop choice.
I know. Yeah. As on the outside looking in as well, it did baffle me a little bit as well.
I think they just had the symbol turned sideways.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because the troop symbol is similar to the fast attack.
It may have been a stroke of genius because you have to buy an awful lot of Tyrannocyte kits to get those mucolid spores.
Oh, that's mean. That's right, because the only way you could get a mucolid was by a Tyrannocyte. I guess we're making a Sporocyst with this one.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. All Sporocysts all the time.
But see, that's the nice thing about the new way that you're doing the FAQs, is that if that genuinely was a mistake, that you're at it. Because it's just, it just came out. Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
It's because things are going to slip through. Like, things are going to change, like the Harpies and Hive Crones becoming flyers rather than being fast attack choices. Yeah. Not that was a mistake in 8th, but somebody might have afterwards been like, well, why didn't we make them flyers? It's like, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the same thing with removing their minimum move as well, because suddenly we realised when the index was out and it hit the world that Harpies and Hive Crones get all the drawbacks of being flyers, but very few of the benefits. So, and these things, they're they're not supersonic. They don't have to keep going forwards. They can stay in place by flapping their giant wings. Because they're designed to go into close combat.
They're basically flyers constantly in hover mode, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. They're just or they're extremely fast Carnifexes, if it helps to think of it that way. Yeah.
Just jumping.
Exactly. It's like the Helldrake as well. That didn't have a minimum move because it was like it's manoeuvrable. It's not meant to be supersonic, and so it's like, oh yes, that's just a really fast demon engine. Yeah. I keep looking at that. I should be looking at that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're good. We're good right there. Still recording. Hopefully the sound's still working. Yep. It's the problem with not having a sound guy. We could be like 20 minutes ago the sound turned off, and I won't know until I check afterwards. But okay, I can't think of really much more to talk about. Because everything else I want to talk about, you can't talk about.
You can certainly ask questions.
Well, yeah, I just know that you. Well, okay, what do we know? I'm trying to divide what I know and what shouldn't be talked. Like Necromunda, Tyrannus came out. Yeah. No, because they haven't said yet what's coming out next for codexes yet, have they?
I think we did make an announcement about a couple of things coming out in December at the Blood and Glory event the other week. I think Dark.
Which is what I'll let you say it.
Dark Angels and Blood Angels. Yeah? Did we say that? We did say that. Did we say that?
I hope so. Otherwise, I'm editing that part of the interview out. Yeah, that's right, Martin. If there's anything we don't want said, we can just edit it out. Right? Right? Don't just shut down the whole thing, Martin. That's not very nice.
Feed my children. I don't have children. But there we go. Yeah, so they're coming out in December. I believe we've said that, which is quite exciting. So you'll get to see... so it's the next stage of the Space Marines. We've had Codex Space Marines with the new Primaris editions, and now we get to see what the Specialist chapters are doing, which is really exciting.
Is your team bigger now than it was about a year ago?
No, it's exactly the same size.
So how do you come out with this many things in a row, and FAQs, and erratas, and keep an eye on everything, and not have a bigger team? Were you just not busy before?
They never go home. Yeah. They live here. We all live here. No, it's just everyone's very professional, very organised, and we work very, very hard, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, when we did Warhammer 40,000 8th edition, we did all the indexes at the same time, and as you might imagine, doing. I think the last time this happened was with 3rd edition, where all the army lists were redone. At the same time. Of course, the range was much smaller then, and so we redid the rules for every single Citadel miniature we make, and a bunch we don't anymore, at the same time, and that was a colossal effort. But we're really we're all very tired still, but we're really happy with with being able to do that, because it meant that everyone was catered for, everyone's toy soldier was catered for. So new edition drops. Index books are available. All your toy soldiers, you can play with them straight away, which is very important. And so we hope we did right by that. But
here's a question you might not be able to answer, but it'll be my final question because I think it'll help wrap things up. The rapid release of the 8th edition codexes, like the indexes came out right away, obviously needed to, because you can't play through miniatures, and that would just not do. The codexes seem to be coming out quickly to then try to catch everybody up to date. I know the chapter approved kind of will fill a bit of the gap with stratagems and all of that. But are you able to say a general time frame that it'll take before all the codexes have been updated? Are we looking at a 2-year kind of period? Is that what we would generally look at?
I think we're trying to get the majority of them out within a year. So
you're not slowing down come the new year?
Oh, no.
Because I know, like, Age of Sigmar obviously has to pick back up.
Yeah.
And so you got to do that, too. And you're still going to keep on the pace with the 40k stuff as well?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we've got a bunch of codexes left remaining to do. Hopefully, yeah. It will take a bit longer than that. Some of them, because some of them will be waiting on miniatures releases. So some of them will be a bit later, but we're trying to get the majority out within a year, I think, of the launch of 40k 8. So, and for those people that won't have codexes, they will have, as you say, fresh rules in chapter approved to tie them over, and the index stuff will still be ongoing. And we'll still be looking at FAQs and erratas to improve stuff. We've got that lever to pull if things aren't, if things are getting a little bit left behind for armies that don't have codexes yet. So it'll all be good.
That's very exciting to hear. It's nice to see that there's not going to be something that I'll have to wait 4 or 5 years and get done right before 9th edition comes out, right?
Which is crazy to think. That's what it used to be. You used to get your codex, and then 3, 4, 5 years later, you'd get your next go around. But now we're getting through them. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed all this. Getting an inside peek as to the writing and rules and narrative process and all of that. We didn't even scratch the surface with all the narrative stuff. I could talk forever about that. But I think we hit on enough points right there. Getting to see the inside view of how things work. And you can kind of understand more why things take as long as they do. And so it's actually even more impressive how fast things have been getting done. Yeah. Considering that your team hasn't been increased in size. And yet still getting more and more done than ever before. It feels like, at least from the outside point of view, it feels like the way that there's a lot more. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
Especially come the new year when you have to sometime pick up Age of Sigmar again, and which means you've already. So wow, so you've already done that. So that's why you look a little tired.
Yeah, it's all done.
But good luck with everything. There you go. You can go to sleep now. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more interviews on MiniWarGaming.com from the Warhammer world, and happy wargaming.